Hey, this
Hey.
is the Good Mom, Bad Mom podcast. This is Danielle, aka the Bad Mom.
And this is Jennifer, aka the good mom.
We are going to talk about parenting style clashes with your partner today. Parenting is hard enough as it is, but what happens when you and your partner don't agree on how to handle certain situations?
From discipline to routines, clashing parenting styles can cause a lot of tension in relationships.
Nothing tests your patience like a partner who thinks they know better.
Mm.
Whoa.
There are ways to keep the peace and still do what's best for your kids. But what does that look like?
Yeah. Okay. So different parenting styles can be a reason. So usually comes from how you were raised, and what your parents gravitated towards is what you're more likely to go towards. Yeah, I think like there's definitely a difference in my parenting versus how I was parented. But I think that there are some things that I did pick up. So I am more lax, I guess, when it comes to letting them figure out things on their own, like
Letting them fail.
yeah, letting them fail. But also too letting them kind of figure out, because instead of guiding them of this is the type of person you need to be, I'd rather them figure it out, be a good person and everything. But I'm big on, so like with sports, I'm big on sports, but not when it inconveniences everyone, if that makes sense.
Or like makes their grades lapse or
Makes their grades, yeah. Or like sports in a town that's an hour away, and then practice isn't until 6:30 anyways, and then you're not getting home till 9 o'clock, and their bedtime is 7:30, 8 o'clock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you have another child that you're dealing with that you have, and they're dragging them around. Like, I don't like that. And so my co-parent and I kind of clash on that.
Yeah. I would say my differences with James kind of reside around like me being too lenient and him being much more strict from like, and he has that military background as well, where like I feel like, with sports we both have the same mentality of like, oh yeah, if it's on the weekend and like the practices are all in the same spot and the games are all in the same spot,
we're not
then
coaches.
down. Yeah, we're not coaches. But we're down. So I mean, like we are pretty lax in that aspect.
Yeah.
Of, like we don't push if it inconveniences us, then we're not happy. They're not happy.
Yeah,
And half the time you pay for them to just argue with you to go.
yeah. Well, I mean, yes and no on that. With like
At least when they're younger.
Yeah, but with mine, at least one thing that my co-parent and I have in common of like, you sign up,
100%.
you have to finish it out. You don't have to play the next season, but you do
have to finish. Which we agree on that.
Yeah, you committed to a team, and that's
like you gave your word, and your word means something.
Exactly. But also too, I wanted my kids to kind of branch out on different things.
Try everything.
Yeah, like, we did gymnastics, we stopped at soccer. I kind of wanted more exposure to things. She, wanted to do dance and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And now that didn't really work out. And so like there's clashes like that, but I do understand
some of it is just scheduling clashes too. Like there's definitely like when you're driving an hour away and then your other kid is also in a sport or something like that. Like that makes it very difficult too.
Yeah.
In a 2-parent household, let alone like a single parent household.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And then and then wanting to like actually wanting to do it, and that's been a big struggle we have where, and I know that it's the same, it goes both ways. It's not like me picking on my co-parent by any means, but where she will talk to me more about like, hey, I really don't like this, or I really don't want to do this, kind of thing. But because she doesn't want to let my co-parent down, she doesn't express that that way. And so that's a bit frustrating and things like that.
But again, that's an age.
Yeah.
We learn with age.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, and so you had more structure.
I did.
In yours. And so that probably does contribute more to where you thrive more in, as like schedules, routines, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. One of the things I feel like I do very differently, even like, because I feel like there's parental clashes, like, especially because my parents live so close. So, like,
Yeah.
even having grandparent clashes of like, what's okay with grandma is not at mommy and dad's house
Right.
either. And especially like, where we have a situation where like one of our grandparents is far away. So when she is here, like, there is more spoiling allowed and
Sure.
things like that, just because she doesn't get to see them as much. Whereas like my
Hmm.
mom is here and it's actually almost part of the parental unit with how
Right.
much she's involved. She doesn't get to spoil as much,
Yeah.
and there's been conversations about that where she's a little too lenient on things, or I would be stricter about something, or vice versa. She's stricter on something that I don't care about as much,
Right.
like for instance, like we all talk about slime and glitter. Your kids, my kids,
Oh
everybody knows
my
my house
God.
is the only place you get slime and glitter
Yep.
because
Yep.
everybody else is opposed to it. Where
Yeah.
I'm like, as long as it's in the kitchen, I don't care. So
Well,
there's just different, everybody has a different pickiness, I guess.
so with you needing schedules and routine, how does that work with you and James? Are y'all on the same page on
Well,
that,
I
or?
feel like for him, like he is very military minded.
Yeah.
So schedules and routine work for him as well.
Yeah.
But I feel like the one thing that I'm different with that my parents were, like I feel like you are like have this too. Like if you have to go somewhere, like kids are going, everybody's going.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm like, I would do anything to like not make them like leave the house or me leave the house.
Yeah.
So I'm like, where as a kid, I was forced to go everywhere and do everything, which was like, again, part of my upbringing. Like we were at church or we were home, but we were never like home for very long.
Yeah.
Whereas like my kids are now full homebodies. Like they did grow up in the pandemic, which didn't help with that
Right.
mentality. But I mean, I feel like I don't force my kids to go out on activities and attend things because I was like overly forced to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, in not a way that was like traumatizing. I
Mm-hmm.
just like my house.
I don't know. I mean, I think I didn't do well, I was an only child,
Yeah.
and well, so were you, but
Mhm.
I was an only child, and so I didn't have somebody else to play with.
Yeah.
And so I think that where I struggle was like I will plan things for the girls like on the weekends and stuff like that for us to do, because if I don't, they're going to drive me insane.
Yeah.
They're absolutely, and where I grew up
Entertaining
entertaining
yourself. Yeah.
myself, and so that's been a bit hard for me too, where it's
Yeah.
like, okay, they actually need me to,
Well, you also have the like off a week, on a week. So like they
yeah,
want to be with you.
yeah,
And they
yeah,
don't want to like just entertain themselves because they haven't seen you all week either.
yeah.
So that
And I think that maybe that's what my co-parent, when he and I were married, like that's kind of what
like
he
gave you the
brought.
break. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but then, the dynamic between
Yeah.
us, and how we would, go with the kids and, or just,
I think James would prefer we were like more social and outgoing. And
yeah,
like I do, especially because he works from home. So like he's wanting to leave the house. And I'm like, please don't make me.
yeah,
I've been out there. It's terrible.
yeah. Well, so let's see. Common parenting style clashes, strict versus lenient.
Yeah. I feel like we're in a good balance between the two.
Good.
Like I meant like you and I as far as
Oh,
parenting. I feel like we have a good balance between like where there's stuff that I know that I should be on stricter at. I think in my mind I'm like it hasn't become a problem that
yeah.
I haven't. So then it's like we'll just let it go until it becomes a problem. But I do feel like this school year we kind of re-ramped, like especially with like homeschooling and everything like that.
Mhm.
Like we had to redo structure. And even like within the last month we've overhauled it completely again.
Yeah.
Of just like you need structure. And I don't know if that is more strict or more lenient.
I don't know. I wouldn't say
Because I
necessarily
would think
strict.
it allows you the leniency of
Yeah.
you know what you're supposed to be doing. So as long as what you're supposed to be doing is done,
Yeah.
then you're good.
I think that I'm probably a bit more strict on like well, I guess on the routine of like what they're responsible for in the house,
Mhm.
because if not, that's when I
Yeah,
get
and
loud.
that's what I feel like we overhauled this past, like,
Yeah.
like emptying the dishwasher and doing
Yeah.
laundry and putting up your clothes. Like a lot of it was very much like guided
Yeah.
and reminded. And now I'm like, okay, we're at the age we know what the
Well,
expectation is.
and now that I'm thinking about it, so like I do harp on the girls of like, first thing when they get in the car, do we have homework, and all this
Mhm.
kind of stuff and everything. So growing up, like nobody asked if I had homework or if I needed help, with homework or, anything like that. That was just up to me, which is
Yeah.
probably why I was not a great student.
Yeah.
But
Not that you weren't a great student. I was just agreeing with you that That was probably
Yeah, you better not. Jeez.
I would have to see your grades to be able to
They
answer
were
that.
terrible. I
And
mean,
I
that
mean, I guess that is a true
I think that
statement.
I actually got through school because of my athletic ability, to be honest. Like, because most of my coaches or
Yeah.
my teachers were coaches, and so athletes kind of got I mean, like I said, I didn't read a full book until I was in college. Like, that's
Yeah.
a problem,
Yeah.
And so I think that is something where I am a little bit more lenient than my co-parent when it comes to homework. Not for the fact that I don't care about their education, I
Yeah.
do, but I don't right now. Like I don't see something alarming for
Yeah.
me,
I think we're both like James and I are very similar as far as like education. Like you will have, good grades and whatnot. And if you're not having good grades, that's because there's a problem and we need to communicate about the problem. But
Mhm.
as long as you're doing your best,
Yeah.
then it's not an issue. It's where you're doing your best and we're still failing. Okay, then that's not on you. There's a problem. Like, something needs to be communicated to you differently or you need to learn in a different manner.
Yeah.
And then that's where, like, hey, you have this team of people to step up and support you,
Yeah.
which I feel like we feel similar on that.
Yeah, but I don't have that dynamic.
Yeah.
Like my dynamic is really different.
Yeah.
And all of this to say of like I'm not saying my way is better than, my
Anybody else's,
co-parents'
yeah.
way or, anything like that. It's just what my experience is.
Yeah.
And so like I know that, usually they have math homework. And
Mhm.
so he will have her sit down and will essentially be over her shoulder
Yeah.
for 2 hours for
Mhm.
5 math problems. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not. And if it's that long, like we're having that much of an issue, like she's mentally checked out anyways,
Yeah.
like after
Well, then
45
it's
minutes.
like, hey, do we need a tutor? Do we need to learn this
Yeah,
a different way?
it's
Then
something, yeah, like and she and I think that that's the other thing is that when she does say to me,
Mhm.
"Hey, like I do need some help," or like you walk me through
Yeah.
this, it's easier. Well, I mean, me and math, we don't get along very
Yeah.
well, but she learns the way I do when it
Mhm.
comes to math specifically. And so she and I will actually we'll come to this understanding and I'll be able to help her through it a whole
Yeah.
lot faster because I learned my brain works the same way hers
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
whenever it comes to math. God love her. I mean, I'm sorry for
Yeah.
passing that on to you. But then my youngest learns like my co-parent does,
Mhm.
where she just picks it up and like
Yeah.
he is insanely smart, like
Yeah.
insanely smart. And they like
I think that goes
concepts.
into like each kid has a different need as well. And
Yeah.
like trying to parent both of them the
Yeah.
same way doesn't work as well.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and so it can be frustrating for me because I understand how my daughter, how she learns and, things like that. And he doesn't have as much patience for that
Mhm.
because
He's got it.
he's got it.
Which I
And
understand.
absolutely can
Yeah.
understand where that's frustrating. And so for me, that is something where we clash, kind of when
Yeah.
it comes to stuff like that. But with us not being in the same home, it's just kind
Yeah.
of like, okay, this is just something that we don't talk about,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Well, and I think too, like, what you were saying with homework is like, some children in general need more like guidance and hands on. And like my oldest, while doing homework, sometimes I just need to be in the room. I don't need to be micromanaging her,
Yeah.
but like just to keep her from a level of distracted
Yeah.
of like, hey, there's a consequence sitting next to you. If I
Yeah.
get distracted, there'll be like a hey, focus again.
That's how my youngest is.
Yeah. Whereas like my youngest is like, hey, did you do your homework? Yeah, I already did it.
Yeah.
Everything's done.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, okay.
With my youngest, usually she has it done,
Mhm.
but if she doesn't, she likes me for me to sit like right there with
Yeah.
her, just my presence
Yeah.
being there, kind of thing.
But wants to do it themselves.
But wants to do it herself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so back to the common parenting style clash, gender roles. Do you have that in your house? Like any like clashing when it
I
comes to that?
feel like there is, but I don't think it's intentional to gender roles.
Mm.
I think it's just, it needs to be done. And he's asking it. I don't think he's just specifically like, get in there and make me a sandwich.
my God.
Because that would never go over well.
Yeah.
But I think he's like, hey, like we need to help make dinner. We need to help do these, like just basic life skills. I mean, the only gender things that we've gotten into are like things that he doesn't think are real sports. And that's where we've like fought on those where
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, like our oldest went through a phase where she wanted to try cheerleading. And he was like, that's not a real sport. She's not doing cheerleading. And I'm like, dude.
Reckless. That is
So
reckless.
that's the only, and then again, like he ended up letting her, like I battered him into
Yeah.
And then she ended up trying out and doing like a little, like, we have like little intermediate like
Yeah.
Christmas shows and things like where you don't actually have to be a cheerleader to
Yeah.
participate in. And so she ended up doing one of those and loved it. But then like she didn't like all the attention. So then it was like out of her face, like phased out.
Yeah.
Which if you had just let that phase out,
Right.
it wouldn't have been a whole thing.
Right.
But then it became a whole thing because he was like, my daughter's not doing that. That's not a real sport.
See, so my co-parent, and when it comes to gender roles, he will straight up tell them, I'm not raising you like girls. I'm raising you like boys.
My dad has a great son, and it's me.
Yeah, like, and that it drives me crazy.
Why?
Well, now I'm not, and maybe it's because not so much for my youngest ish. Okay, so it comes in different things. So with my oldest, she's more sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like it blocks her
Being like soft.
well, no, her feeling comfortable expressing herself, or if she feels sad to cry, like
She's
he
supposed to be
doesn't,
tough.
yeah, like he
Yeah.
doesn't like the crying thing, like he doesn't.
I
Like
will say that probably.
that's
That's
something.
a problem I have is like I can just brush it off, and that's
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah, and so I and that, but then my youngest, it's a different problem. It's stop farting in public. Like stop burping at the table, like get your feet off at the kitchen table, like you know,
Yeah.
that type of thing. And so
Feral.
yeah, and so it kind of where it's like she's feral already, like we don't
I
need
mean,
to
there are
support
pros
that.
and cons to it for sure. Like, do I
Yeah.
think females need to know how to change a tire? Do I think they need to know how to work a saw? Do I think they need to
Yeah.
know how to hang some boards
Yeah,
or trim and paint a wall and
For
operate a
sure.
drill
yeah,
and change their oil?
Yeah.
100%.
yeah.
But then, like, I've always been like this really good mix of both, like bougie and like absolute bro.
I think I'm being that way. I think that like I'm having to be that way, and I'm learning myself how to be more of the man of the
Yeah,
house.
literally, yeah.
You know, and everything where, you know,
Which I mean, that's something that we clash on as well. Like if it has a like motherboard of any kind, James
Yeah.
has it.
yeah,
If it requires construction, it's on me.
yeah,
Like
Yeah.
if it has a car, like if it's the cars, if it's computers, if it's TV, it's James.
yeah,
If it requires wallpaper, painting, or a saw of any kind, it's me.
yeah. Okay, so another common parenting style clash: hands-on versus hands-off.
I'm a little bit of both. I'm hands on the first time, and then I'm going to step back and be here, but hands off.
I think that I'm more hands-on if they ask.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm hands-off.
But I think it's too, I think it's the same of like, hey mom, can you just like help with this? Absolutely. And then they're like,
Yeah.
okay, what do you do next? And then I still think like it's more of a like, all right, well you tell me. What
Yeah,
are you doing?
absolutely.
Like I'm here for you, boo.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so different styles don't mean one is right and one is wrong.
I think like finding common ground on things too. Like, okay, so you have a parenting clash. Like, wait, what do we agree on in this topic? And then how do we branch out from there to come to a compromise?
Yeah.
Because I mean, like one of the things we talked about is like strictness as far as like my husband and I, like he thinks I'm not as strict on the girls as he would be in certain, like, you know, picking up their clothes or like whatever it is, you know? And so for me, I'm like, okay, well, this is communication. Like, hey
Yeah.
guys, you know, we're going to ask about it. And then I'm like, hey, what are we supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
So there's probably 3 times that I've checked in, whereas he's asked 1 time. He's coming back with consequences the second time.
Oh, I give the 3. I
Yeah.
give the 3 times, and then I'm asking why is it that they're listening to me when I'm
Yeah.
loud,
Yeah.
where while I'm loud right now, I'm literally saying what I've been saying softly.
Yeah.
You know, so why is it that you're listening to me while I'm loud instead of,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It's
a balance for sure.
It really is. So
But I think, yeah, like what you said, like it's not about winning. Like we're a team. We're
Yeah.
supposed to parent together. This benefits both of us based on their behavior.
Mhm.
So how do we again like find a common ground and then go from there?
I think in a marriage I think that that's definitely healthy. I think that on the other side though, from me, I don't have that.
Yeah.
I don't have.
Well, there is some things that you guys have to be aligned on overall, but then in your individual households, it's pretty much up to
There's a
you.
lot though that we just and we don't talk about those kind of things,
Yeah.
and
It's much more of like if a situation arises.
yeah, but even so, I mean, and I'm sure that other moms, single moms can kind of
Yeah.
relate to this of like where it's just you pick your battles
Yeah.
where it's just
Do you
like,
feel like some things are easier because you were just you in your household as far as ground
oh,
rules and
for
things like that?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then also too, but what they're learning at the other house, they're also bringing to me. So
Yeah.
like it takes an adjustment. So like I'll get them at the very end of the week and it'll take probably 1 or 2 days
To get
for
them
them to be
regulated. Yeah.
acclimated to, kind of how I run things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can be kind of frustrating,
Yeah.
but and I don't know if he feels the same way, but it is, I think that it can be more difficult but in a different way, like where of course we had conversations when we were married, where we wouldn't see eye to eye on things but we would find a compromise, and now that's gone.
Mhm.
And so I think that it goes back to what I've said in other episodes of like the gentle parenting thing,
Mhm.
where I think that I'm definitely more of a gentle parent. And so that's kind of frustrating for me, because I'm not, because in separate households, you don't really have a buffer. So like he doesn't have a buffer at my house to kind of keep them on track of like kind of more of his style, and then
Mhm.
vice versa.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure it's equally as frustrating
Yeah.
for him as it is me, to just not have that. I mean, so finding common ground starts with open communication. And I just simply don't have that. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
that's can be pretty common in, split homes and all
Well, and
that kind of
two, like
stuff.
as long as you just have it in the forefront, like both parents, no matter how much you communicate, are like, hey, this is like the kids are the end goal, obviously. Of like, hey, how do we do our best to parent them, and what's
Yeah.
the best decision I can make for them in this?
Yeah.
Then hopefully some of those just naturally line up.
I think like how I handle it sometimes, because there's not really room for that conversation
Yeah.
in my situation.
Hmm.
And so it's more of a, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm deciding to do it this way.
Yeah.
I'm, if it's something big enough,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
say that, or hey, like this is kind of what's going on. Like, what do you
Yeah.
think? Kind
Yeah.
of thing. And sometimes I get an answer and sometimes I don't, and all that kind of stuff. But I think
Just learning to agree to disagree sometimes.
yeah, and I think like the next thing, it's not about winning, it's about working as a team. And I mean, yeah, like when it comes to my kids, if me and my co-parent are not in a good place, and that the kids are the ones that suffer,
Yeah.
I mean, they really do. And so I do try my best to not let them see that,
Yeah.
and so but yeah, but again, then pick your battles. Not every disagreement needs to be a blown debate. I actually, I mean, I'm not recently divorced, but kind of. I mean, it hasn't even been 5 years
Yeah.
yet, and so I think that I kind of
Still
had that.
fresh.
Yeah, and so I think that I kind of had, and I don't know if other single moms experience this, but like even after the divorce, we were obviously in separate households, but there was still this glue that kept us
Yeah.
together. Like there was still, we weren't
You didn't
separate.
know how to be separate
Yeah, we
yet.
didn't know how to
Yeah.
be separate yet. And so that was kind of a thing. And so I think that we've now come to this, or at least I've come to this place of like, oh, I don't have to listen to this.
Yeah.
I don't have to argue with you
Yeah.
about this. And like you can run your house the way that you want to.
Yeah. And we can put a pin in this
And
and
yeah,
yeah.
and just go about our lives,
Yeah.
kind of thing, where I think, I mean, because being with somebody for as long as we were together, it's very easy to slide back into that, well, no, I'm going to get my point across. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, you actually don't have to.
Yeah.
It's actually okay that they don't see your side. I mean, you're not seeing their
Yeah.
side, as long as it's not detrimental to the kids, obviously. But
Yeah. And I feel like de-escalating like those agreements too, like or disagreements rather, help with like the overall picture of things of like, hey, if like maybe we need to take a step back. Like obviously we're fighting just to fight right now. Like I hear you, I see you. And that is so much easier said than done because you and I like to fight.
yeah.
Like we fight to win.
Yeah, but I think too. where
We have to step back and be like, this isn't about this
yeah,
fight.
and I think that that's what I kind of learned here recently, where I stepped back and I thought, I don't have to win this. Like, there's literally no gain for me
Yeah.
to like. I don't need your approval. I don't need you. You know, like the kids are okay. Like, I
Mhm.
don't need you in this decision. You know, but I think that the knee jerk is to go back
Yeah.
and say like, hey, are you okay with it, you know, kind of thing, where I think that I'm still learning that I don't have to do that
Yeah.
anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
um
And you put in here having like a safe word of like a hey, like
yeah,
we need to pause, we need to come back.
meatloaf.
Yeah, banana, pineapple, whatever it
I
is.
like the meatloaf one
Yeah.
of, what is it, it's, I would do anything for
For
love,
love,
but
but I
I
won't
won't do
do that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so let's see. Set your shared parenting goals. Do you guys do that? Like, do you guys like have a
That is one thing I kind of wish we had done prior to like getting married slash having babies was like we got pregnant surprised and like didn't have a whole conversation about hey where what religion do you want to raise your kids,
yeah.
what do you want your kids in private school, do you know what I mean, like never, like we figured that out on the go,
Oh,
and
really?
that was really difficult.
See, we did have that discussion
Like
of
we
like
never had it.
of religion, where I had said that it was important to me for the kids to be raised knowing God and,
Yeah.
you know, that type of
No, it
thing.
was just all kind of assumed that each of us were going to raise our kids how we were raised.
Yeah.
And like there were no conversations about it. So that we figured out parenting when we were parents.
Yeah.
Like there was no conversation about it. And from that aspect, I would like, even telling my children before they have kids, like, hey, go see a marriage counselor and just sit down
Yeah.
with your, while pregnant, if you don't want to do it earlier. But
Yeah.
like, you guys need to get on this because there's going to be things that come up. Like,
Yeah.
are you doing allowance? Are you making them pack their lunches every day? Are you,
Yes.
are you baptizing them? Are you circumcising them? Like
Yeah.
whatever the conversations are, we were like asked questions and both of us were like deer in the headlights of like, I have no idea.
I think that that me and my co-parent were actually pretty spoiled in that, because for both pregnancies I was bedridden.
Yeah. So you got all
So
the
I
time
had
to
all
talk.
the time to
Yeah.
do research, to read all the books, to do, you know, all the
Yeah.
stuff. And so, I mean, I think that he probably dreaded coming home. It's like, God, what do we have to talk
What did
about
she
today?
learn about?
Yeah, what did she learn today? You know,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So,
No, and then like during pregnancy, I was just so petrified how the baby was coming out of me
yeah.
that I was like, no, thank you.
So I'm interested in this. So for compromise on approaches, agreeing on middle ground for discipline or routines. Like, do you guys, I mean, I know that you kind of do it, you've done it on the fly, but like, but now since you're in that phase, like, is that something that you guys sit down and talk about?
I think
or
after the fact on a lot of them, we talked
yeah,
about it and we were like, oh, okay, well, I'm bad about this of like, I'll bulldoze him when it's like, okay, well, I said what I said. So that's what's happening. And
Yeah.
then next time I'll run it by you. My bad.
yeah,
Like, you know what I mean? And so like, I am bad about that where like he just lets me. And so I feel like for that, like both of us come back together and he's like, hey, actually, I felt like we needed to do it this way.
yeah,
And I was like, okay, well, my way obviously didn't work. So that's on me.
yeah,
Like, but there is a lot of coming back and there is a lot of communication of like, well, I didn't really want to do it that way. And it's like, oh, well, why didn't you say something or speak
yeah,
up? But I've just bulldozed him so much that he's just like, doesn't speak up.
yeah,
So now we're getting back to that. Okay, well, let's communicate. Let's like, I want you to be a part of this. I want you to like have conversations and stand up. And if you don't think, our kids should be doing something, then, but I mean, down to like how much tablet time do they have? YouTube time, like,
yeah. Well, and I think like part of my part in my marriage downfall, what I mean, I was accused of bulldozing,
Yeah.
and that was,
Oh, I 100% do it, especially like in the moment of like everybody's losing their ish and we just need to make a decision.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, and so I have actually been mindful of
Yeah.
am I bulldozing, you know, kind of thing. But and maybe that's what it is too, is that I, you know, in our marriage I was bulldozing or whatever.
Use your own word.
Yeah, I was
That's
bulldozing.
what it is.
Yeah, and so now, and I mean, I understand from his part of, or his side rather, of him thinking, well, this is how it was before, so what would change now, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so I think that maybe that's kind of where.
Which and like again with the clashing, like and the learning new styles and everything like that is something that you have to deal with as well when you're like, oh wait, I just learned something about myself I didn't love, and now
Yeah.
I need to change it. But your partner still has whiplash from
Yeah.
the last, 8
Yeah.
years or whatever you've been doing it.
Yeah.
So then you've kind of got to like eat some crow and be like, you're right, I did do that.
Yeah.
And then because it's gonna come up a couple times
Yeah,
before they believe that you've changed your way.
but you also have to accept that they're not going to accept that
Yeah.
either. That they're
They're
not
gonna need to see some, like, repetition of this new behavior.
right. And then
Yeah.
at the same time, you have to kind of, and you do, it is like eating crow of like, all right, you're going to have to let them just
Mm.
show their ass for a
Yeah.
little
You're gonna have
bit.
to let them make some petty comments.
Yeah. And just,
Sometimes they're better than you and don't.
yeah, I mean, but yeah, in that way. And I think that that's part of the growth process
Yeah.
where it's, you get the reward of like,
Well,
oh, this, like
yeah.
letting this off of my shoulders of this part of my personality that I don't want anymore,
Yeah.
but then it's
You don't
like,
really then that's where people lose it, is they're like, "Oh, well, somebody said something, so why would I be any other way? I'm just gonna go back to the way I was." And it's like,
yeah,
"No, you gotta
no,
sit in the
like you're
crow."
doing it for you. You're not
Yeah.
doing it for them,
Well, and they're allowed to be mad about how
Oh,
you
for
were.
sure.
So,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think there's that of like, what do you mean? I've changed. Didn't you not just notice? I just
Yeah.
changed 5 seconds ago.
Well, and
And
also
so,
too,
yeah.
you're working on yourself doesn't mean that the other person's working on themselves.
Yeah.
And
True.
so it's a lot. And and especially in a divorce, like you're forced. I don't care who you are. You are forced to look in the mirror and see, the ugly and so but some people decide that they're going to change and some people don't. And so it just is what it is. And so, I mean, I'm sure that there's some things that are not going to be changed in my personality where when
Yeah.
I'm pushed to a certain limit, I'm probably going to lash out still.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I think again, like it's just about how much truth you can accept about yourself of like, hey, okay, well, yeah, I know I do that. Not a problem for me. Sorry if it's a problem for you.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean,
And
there are things that you'll give in.
so
But
are there things that James like that you'll let him take the lead on? Like you already know, like he's got this, or are you more of like you want a hand in everything?
I would it just depends on the day.
Yeah.
There is one thing that he does that I do like genuinely love, and it's like if the girls are, which I mean they're not like, we don't get to levels where like we're screaming at each other, but sometimes like I would say once every quarter all three of us are synced on our cycles.
Oh, fun for him.
And there is like a little bit of rage happening.
Yeah.
And there's one thing that he'll do, like if they're mouthing off to me, like he'll see me get to a level and he'll step in, and instead of being like, that's not how you talk to mom, and he'll like change it and be like, that's not how you talk to my wife. And I'm like, oh, okay.
That's nice.
And it calms me down immediately, because then it's like, oh, I have a partner. Like my
That's
partner has stepped
nice.
up. And it's like, hold
Yeah.
up, wait a minute. Like instead of it being like everybody arguing and like, and again, it's not so much picking sides because I don't want it to be us against kids, but like
For
when
sure.
they're in their feral ages,
Yeah.
it's us against the kids.
It is.
So that is nice that he'll like switch and be like, that's not how you talk. Like it'll get to a level where like I'm now becoming a mom that I don't want to be.
Yeah.
And he like registers and is like aware of like what lines I'm not trying to
Yeah.
cross and things like that. But like in the heat of the moment, like you said, like we are not okay.
Well, maybe that is a Taurus thing, because I will actually do that with the girls.
About
like
their dad, yeah.
yeah, about their dad. If like they're smarting off, or like
Yeah.
they say something, I'm like,
That is not how you talk to your
no,
dad,
we're
yeah.
not talking to dad
And I
that
do
way.
that too, because like they'll get sassy with him, like because he likes to play and he'll like make little comments
Yeah.
and pick at him, and like they'll play back with him. But then there are times and places, which is where they're still learning. Like,
Yeah.
hey, there's times and places to play, and then other times it's just rude and disrespectful.
Right.
And then that's when we're like, hey, this was one of those times.
Yeah.
Where, like I love the energy, but this is not the time or the place.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, so when there is a clash, it's best to pause and not argue in front of the kids. What do you think about that?
I think if you're arguing about a specific child, 100% agree. I think if you're arguing to argue, like for instance, I'm trying to think of something like he was supposed to go get milk and came back and forgot the milk, and it's like literally I just asked you to get the milk.
Yeah.
Like I think kids need to see you argue, because they all, but then also like
As
make
long
up
as it's
from them.
respectful.
Well, make up in front of them too.
Yeah, for
because
sure.
it is part of like, and I'm not talking full blown like not appropriate, but like
X-rated.
watch them see you apologize.
Yeah, no,
because
for
they're
sure.
gonna like, I don't want them thinking every relationship the second you get in a fight is over.
or
Yeah.
like there is no apology, there
Yeah.
is no accountability.
But I will say that, like, I used to hear my parents talk about me, and that did bother me.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
not in a way of, like, detrimental or, like, hurtful, or they were like, "Oh my god, she's such a loser," or, like, nothing like that. But, like, when it came to decisions
I'm
about
sorry.
me, like, you know what I mean? Like, when it came
Yes.
to decisions about me, I
Yeah.
just was like, "I'm standing right here."
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
felt like that was always very, like,
Frustrating.
frustrating. So I will not have a conversation about that, like, unless it's positive and I know they can
Right.
hear me. But
Yeah.
if it's something that I'm like, hey, we need to actually, like, look into this or talk about this, I'll make sure they're not.
Me and my co-parent, we are still in that phase of
I don't think you guys should argue.
no, we should not. And so it's one of
That's a
those of
different kind
like,
of argue.
yeah, and so it's one of those of like, okay, who's gonna wave the white flag?
Yeah.
And to be honest, and it's not one of those where I'm like, I want to be the first, I do the white flag. It's not that. Like that's not, but I do have that mentality, but not to best him,
Yeah.
but it's because it's detrimental to the kids. It like
Yeah.
it really is. They don't need to see it,
But it's
you
hard
know.
because you guys still have so much feelings wrapped up in each other. Not necessarily like good, bad, or indifferent, but there's a lot of emotion.
Yeah,
And
because like I mean, we were together for so
yeah.
long, you know, and he was my person and you
Yeah.
know, and all that kind of stuff. And so but also too what's hard and I think I don't know if it's necessary. I'm not going to talk for him that it's frustrating for him, but it can be frustrating for me because again, I've changed as a
Yeah.
person pretty rapidly, you know,
Yeah.
pretty like there's
And he didn't
some
get a warning.
no, he didn't
Yeah.
get a warning and I've just grown from there.
Yeah.
And so I feel like he holds me to the person I used to be a lot
Yeah.
and which is understandable.
Yeah.
However, parenting in that type of situation is very hard and so I do because I know that he and I can escalate real quick. Like
Yeah.
we definitely will
You
escalate
know
real
all
quick.
the buttons.
And he knows all mine.
Yeah.
So I'm always mindful going into a conversation that I think may cause some issue of like you need to be the one to and not saying that he won't wave the
Yeah.
white flag, but just having that
You need
going
to be the one to,
into
like,
it.
back down.
Yeah, going into it knowing, hey, you got to do the white flag, you know, like just going ahead and knowing
Well, and
that
I think on, like, topics that you know are sensitive, you kind
yeah.
of, like, unless again that it's, like, something that happened with, like, the girls getting called to the principal or, like, a fight
Yeah.
at school, like, those are obviously high, like, emotion events where both
Yeah.
of you can kinda come in hot
Yeah.
in general, and then, you have to kinda back yourself down. But I think there's situations too where, like, if you go into them, like, preemptively, like, it's much easier to have the conversation
Mhm.
because you're not as emotionally charged about
Yeah.
it. So, like, if you can talk about things that you know are upcoming in advance,
Yeah.
then when they actually happen, it's a lot easier to kind of regulate your emotion.
Yeah. And with the next point, it says you need to be a united front, even if you're not fully aligned. I think that we, for the most part, I mean, at least on my side, I feel like we are like when he and I are, you know, in the
I feel
same.
like value wise, you guys are kind of similar.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
There are some things that we aren't aligned with, but I do make a point to make it very clear of like me and dad are a parent team. We are a
Yeah.
parent team. So like I'm not gonna make any decisions that are like major decisions without him. You
Yeah.
know, like you have this idea, that's awesome. I love it. I'm here for it. But we need to talk. We need to bring dad into this conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that right now where we're at, that's the best that we can do.
Yeah. I
You
feel
know,
like
at
that's the
least
same for me though. I mean, those conversations are pretty
yeah, for sure. Take a break before reacting. I think that's
that is situational. Sometimes you don't have time.
yeah.
I think if you can, absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you're on your way to the principal's office, just do a lot of breathing before you get there.
Yeah, and sometimes it's very abrupt with me because like a button has been pushed for me.
And we're at DEPCON 5.
Yeah, where it's like I'm hanging up the phone and it's not, and I know that it's so rude and it's childish, but literally, you would rather me do that
Then
than
stay on the
stay
phone.
on the phone
Yeah.
and continue this because if I've hung up on you, I'm about to say things
I
that
don't regret.
I won't regret,
Yeah.
you know, because they're coming deep from my soul, you know, like but they're not helpful,
Yeah.
you know, and so we're there. I mean, that's not, I mean, good, bad, and ugly here.
Yeah.
That's not great, but I feel like hanging up is much better than saying
Saying some
exactly
things.
what I am wanting to say. I mean,
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
and so in a divorced, scenario, that's the best that I have. And now again, I do consider myself someone that's continually growing and evolving. And I mean, this is a very new situation for me because even, the women that I grew up around, most of the fathers were not in the picture afterwards. So like I've never,
Really?
yeah, no, like, so I don't even know this dynamic of having, the dad want to be around, being very active,
Interesting.
having, because we have that where he has them one week, I have them, a week.
That's
Like
so interesting.
that was never something that I was exposed to.
Every single, with the exception of my mom, almost every single mom that I was stay-at-home mom, and the dads worked.
Yeah,
Like
no.
everyone.
I was never exposed in my family unit as a kid of like what that dynamic looks like. It was always, he's a
I'm
piece
trying
of
to
shit.
I'm trying to think of like the first I like one of my friends had divorced parents and I was trying to remember, but I legitimately think like we were in high school when that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I'm winging it at this
Yeah.
point.
I never put those together.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I mean, I have TV and I have, I try to not use other moms in other situations because I feel like that kind of gasses me
Yeah.
because I am very fortunate to
Yeah.
have a co-parent that wants to be in the kids' lives, that is
Absolutely.
very,
That's
loves his
rare.
kids
Yeah.
and is all about, his kids. I'm very fortunate to have that. I'm just not used to having that, or like
Yeah.
not that I'm not used to seeing that
And
up
played
close and
out.
yeah. And so I'm having to work that out, So
Interesting.
yeah, it's
Yet another difference we found between us.
yeah. So strategies for de-escalating disagreements in the moment. Hang up the phone. What do you and James do like in those type of moments? Like
I
how do
don't know.
you
I probably say
de-escalate?
something violent and he laughs and then it just like
Kind of
I'm
cuts the
literally like I will fist fight you in the front yard and he just cracks up laughing and then we're fine. Or like
yeah.
I don't know what it is. Like sometimes like I very few conversations get like knocked down dirty heated.
That's good though.
Like most of them like end with a okay babe, well, I don't really care about whatever like
Yeah.
but the
Not
ones that are like legitimate like decisions we both kind of agreed on.
yeah.
So
Okay. So avoid conflict in front of the kids to maintain it. We already said this. Maintain united front. I mean, but I do think that maybe I put it on here twice because it is very important. I think that it is really important for the kids to have a good balance between both parents.
100%.
I think that it's very detrimental. Ooh, regular check-ins about parenting. I know in my situation that is not a possibility
I don't know that
or
we do that. What do you mean by regular check-ins? Like, hey, am I being a good mom today?
well, I
Like with
mean,
your spouse?
like maybe periodically, like, sometimes when you and I are talking where it's like, "God, I don't feel like I was a good mom today, or like
Yeah.
I, kind of got into it with my daughter, like,
Yeah.
and, kind of play that out. Oh, well, and then I'll like kind of give that feedback or, whatever. And so I'm wondering if you guys ever do that.
Not really. I mean, I definitely have like moments where I'll be like, babe, do you think I'm a good mom? But he's always like, yeah, of course I do. Where is this even coming from? So like I don't think he understands it the way that you and I understand it.
Okay.
Because as a dad, he's just naturally a good dad.
Yeah.
Dads just get good dad vibes, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I think like, what was the question that you asked me?
It was, do you all have like regular check-ins to like
Oh,
talk about what's working, what isn't working?
no, I think we just operate with the like if I see him doing something or like for instance, like one of the girls will be like, Dad, can you like play a video game with me? Or he'll tell me that he like took them for ice cream after school or like just stuff that's like out of the normal for him but like that he found time to do. I like always make a point to be like, oh, look at you being a good daddy today or
Oh,
something
that's
like that. Like
nice.
not in like a condescending way, but like in a
Oh, yeah.
complimentary way.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
I think
And
that's
then like
good.
I joke like I'll like meal prep or like make breakfast or whatever, and I'm like, you're so lucky you're married to like me.
So you give yourself your
And
own
he's
compliment.
like, I really am. Like
Aw.
he's like, he'll say something. What did he say the other day? I told him I said something like that, and he's like, God does provide, and it was like just something sassy.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I think so. When I think I did it when I was married where I would go to my husband and say like, "Hey,
Yeah.
do you think I was a
Yeah.
little off?" Or like, "Hey, do you think that was a little bit too much?" Or
Yeah.
like, "I think she hates me,"
Yeah.
or something like that.
I know when he thinks it was a little too much because he stepped in and is like, "That's my wife. You need to go somewhere because she's not okay, and everybody in the house is gonna die if y'all don't listen." So I know when he's like, and then he'll just kind of give me a look of, and I'm like, okay, I need to calm myself down for 30
Aw.
minutes.
So, okay, so resources. Therapy is a great resource. Helps to
Yeah.
understand why you parent the way you do.
100% recommend getting that conversation out before you have babies.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, that the therapists know what you're going to need to decide on. So you don't even really have to go in there with topics. They'll just
Yeah.
be like, oh, you want to talk about parenting? Well, these are things that come up.
Yeah. Well, and you know
Are
what?
you spanking? Are you gentle parenting?
Yeah. Well, and I think so. How to communicate better? I think that that actually what's not helped. So my oldest has a phone now.
Mm,
That has cut out me having to talk to my co-parent at all
yeah.
most of the time, unless something comes up or like whatever, which is rare that happens.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, to be honest. Like we don't do, and I don't know, maybe in a view of like outside of mine, I think that I can see where the benefits of, hey, just doing like, like during drop off, like,
Yeah.
hey, like just checking in, you doing okay?
Yeah.
Like anything you
And then
noticed
just like
or,
a rundown of their week going forward and
yeah.
like what you would participate in
Yeah.
and what he's going to be solo on. And
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
that
it
that
couldn't
would be
hurt.
nice. I mean, not necessarily talking about each other's lives, but
Yeah.
just like talking about like or
Like
just to
there's
check in
like
with the kids.
specific because
Yeah.
they're pretty active too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that would definitely be
I
something that
mean,
would be
well, in
helpful.
that case, then like we kind of do that every like Sunday, basically.
Oh,
Of
that's
like,
nice.
hey,
Yeah.
this is what we've got going this week. Are you taking them to this
I think that
or
that would
whatever? Yeah.
definitely cut down on, clashes and, things like
Yeah.
that. I mean, because I think having the conversation, then you're thinking about what's
Well,
about
and
to
I think,
happen.
I mean, even with you, like, I feel like we're at the point, even like co parenting, like, you guys have been together so long, the only stuff you're clashing on is like new things that pop up.
No, I think that it's
Really?
definitely old things
Is
as
it?
well. Like it's,
Like old habits that still haven't been broken or like just things that
yeah,
never,
old
yeah.
habits that haven't been broken, like that
Yeah.
are continuing that we're
Because I
just
would
not
say
going to
our
see eye to eye
clashes
on.
are like new things.
Yeah. Well, and I think that maybe, well, I don't know. Well, because, well, I think that both of you are pretty good at, you're evolving and you're,
Yeah.
you know,
Both of us are very like patient with the other two. Like,
yeah,
as far as like, okay, well, I'll let you slack off this week.
right. Yeah.
I'll pick up the slack and then, hey, are you good? Like,
Yeah.
should we talk about this? And then like go forward and then, make a plan to
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah.
So I guess I don't have that. And I think
Yeah.
that would probably benefit better if we had a check-in of like, hey,
Maybe
this
you can
is,
start it.
no. I mean, I don't
I
think
was
that we're
like,
there
we've got
yet.
time.
Yeah, I don't think that we're there yet. But
Maybe for next week.
So
or next month.
different years, different resources, parenting books. Yeah, I mean, I did a book, and I did tell my co-parent about it, and it was a book, and it was really oddly titled because it was kind of like just this mommy and daddy are getting a divorce, but we still love you the same anyway. It was like a really weird title in that way. But I let him know about it. I said, hey, if you want, like we can exchange it back and forth between, the house, and because it was a workbook, so the girls like could write in there and, all that kind of stuff. So and that kind of got, because one thing that I did notice in the divorce is the girls clammed up immediately.
Yeah.
It was, and maybe it was just because, to them, they didn't have a voice on our family being broken up.
Yeah.
So why would they have a voice on anything else, kind of thing?
Yeah.
And I do try to give that back to them a little bit, that voice back of like, hey, what do you guys think about this? What do you think about that? Kind of thing. And having them go through that workbook so they could actually talk about the emotions, the feelings, the, all the things. But I think that that's my gentle parenting part of me.
Yeah. I think too, as far as like help books, like help yourself, like who you are in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
may be the problem.
Yeah.
So, if you're struggling with your kids and parenting styles and things like that, maybe you take a look in the mirror.
Yeah, I think that that's one thing that I do is, like, when we do clash, when me and my co-parent clash, I mean,
You're like,
obviously, I
was I in the
can't I
wrong? Yeah.
can't change him and his behavior, so the only thing that I can do
Yeah.
is I can look at me and, like, how could I have handled that better? How
Yeah.
could I have showed up a little bit better? How could I have been,
And again, sometimes we're all human. So sometimes it's
Yeah.
like, I could have shown it better, but I'm not going to.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then again, recognize that about yourself
Yeah.
and be like, hey, I was the problem. I made it worse.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but know that that's gonna
But
repeat,
know that nothing is going to change or
Yeah,
improve with that
for
behavior.
sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. Seeking outside help through therapy or counseling. All the therapy that I went to after the divorce, it really wasn't about the divorce, and
It was about
maybe it's
you. Yeah.
yeah, it was about me, and maybe it's because it was kind of like my mentality of, like, of course I'm divorced,
Yeah.
like, wasn't surprised, knew this was gonna happen,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of thing, and so but I think instead of having that mentality at the forefront, it was more of, again, like you said, like changing, controlling what I can, which is
Yeah.
me. And
Yeah.
so that's what I was going to therapy for, was to change me.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend, by the way, practice empathy and understanding your partner's views. And sometimes that has helped me in my co-parenting situation of, like, I obviously I know where he comes from. I know,
Yeah.
his background, but also know his thoughts and feelings about things, which some of the things are still the same,
Yeah.
for me and him. Knowing that, I think that that's kind of why I can wave the white flag
Yeah.
of, like, because I do
Because you
identify.
understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand him. I
Well, and I
understand.
think too, like, respect goes a
Yeah,
long way. If you
for
respect your
sure.
partner, respect your co-parent,
Yeah,
then you're gonna handle yourself and them differently
yeah,
anyway.
for sure.
So,
Absolutely.
and if you don't respect them, then maybe reevaluate.
Yeah. Oh gosh, but also for moms out there that they don't have that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have anything for you. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't, I wish that I did.
I mean, your actions, you control yourself.
Yeah, like, just focus on what you can control.
Mhm.
That's been the biggest thing for me, is because, I mean, in throughout the divorce, and I mean, we're gonna have an episode where we kind of talk about my journey going through the divorce, but I really was forced to come to terms with the fact that I couldn't change him. I shouldn't have been able to change him. He's his own
Yeah.
person. That's not
Yeah.
what my job was. And I think that that's huge of having that, of, like, just know, change what you can control only, because that's the only thing you can change. No one agrees all the time. The goal isn't perfection. It's to work together for the benefit of the kids, for sure.
Absolutely.
It's okay to have different approaches and strengths. Those differences make you stronger as a team. And how do you handle disagreements with your partner?
Let us know.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for listening to us. As always, a pleasure.
We'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.